people that couldn't join us. So if everyone's happy with that, that's what we'll be doing. And I'll also be trying to capture your top tips. So we'll make a document out of this and you'll be acknowledged. So that's something you can put in the chat and we'll chat a little bit more about that when we get going. But just to let you know, this is kind of a sharing of the wisdom if we can.
Okay, I think I'm going to get going. There's nobody in the waiting room at the moment, but obviously as more people arrive, Lynn will let them in. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to our first EntEdOnline webinar. Fabulous to have you all with us to do what we believe EEUK does best, which is to enable our members and associates to share good practice, to share top tips between them. We're just, at the end of the day, a facilitating organisation that enables you all to do that and do all that really well. So your hosts for this morning are myself, Kate Beresford, and my colleagues, Alison Price and Lynn O'Byrne. Hello. Oh yeah, Alison and Lynn, do you want to just say a quick hello?
Morning.
Unmute. Morning, everyone.
Yeah, Lynn's mention of mute reminds me to ask you all to put yourselves on mute unless you're actually speaking at the moment, please. I'm sure you're all actually really used to doing that now with so much Zoom around, but just a little reminder. Could I have the next slide, please, Alison? Before we get started, just a few words from me about Enterprise Educators UK, very briefly, because I know many of you on this call know all about us. But I do want to mention what we've been doing since March the 23rd, exactly 3 months ago. So essentially on this screen, this is what we are all about. We're about supporting members and associates. We're about recognising your success and impact, and we're about influencing policy. And all of that helps you all to increase the scale, scope and effectiveness of what you're doing. I'm not going to go through the points at the bottom of the screen. They're just some examples of what we do. But there's now actually a brand new button on our website at the top of the website where you can just click and go with one click to all the list of member benefits. So it's really easy if you're ever not quite sure what the member benefits are. And if you want to know more than there is on the website, please don't hesitate to contact any of us. We're always, you know, if you want to know when is the next call for our research fund, for example, and you know, contact us by email or phone, we're always happy to answer questions. Could click onto the next screen. So our purpose is simple, as I've said. It's about increasing scale, scope and effectiveness of what you all do. But in 2020, like everybody here on this call, we've had this big challenge of supporting our members and associates to deliver their enterprise and entrepreneurship education online and completely at a distance. And so the first thing we did at the start of all of this was to set up a brand new page. So it was started off a bit rough and ready. It's developed very well, very quickly. And Alison has we've all worked together on this page, but Alison's actually created a lot of content for this page, as well as collating content from elsewhere. And again, this page is one click from the homepage of the Enterprise Educators UK, enterprise.ac.uk website. It's on the menu at the top, so you can go there. And we did it as a series of questions and answers. We decided that was the most effective way. But what's important to say is that this is constantly evolving. We're constantly reviewing it. It started off as, right, what do I need to do next week? You know, it was that sort of instant, what is the urgent thing that I need to do now? But it's evolving so that it's now much more, what am I going to do next term in September when we're coming back, doing whatever we're going to be doing in September? You know, what are we going to be doing then? So it's gradually evolving. We've sourced a lot of this information from the community. We've invited input to it, but we're still open to much more of that. So if there's something missing from here, something we've not thought of, you've got other suggestions, do let any of the three of us know what you think needs to be added to that site, and we'll do our best to continue to keep it up to date. So if you flick on now, I think, I'm going to hand over to Alison in a moment. Today is this very first Enterprise Educators UK EntEdOnline webinar, and we're delighted to have you all. I think everybody on this call is an EEUK associate. You're not quite sure what an EEUK associate is. You are all EEUK associates. You work for an organisation that is a member of Enterprise Educators UK. And we started a year or so ago using this term associate to try and give some recognition to the fact that you as individuals are an important part of Enterprise Educators UK. So I'm going to hand over to Alison now, who's going to facilitate the webinar for everybody. And thank you, Alison. I'll let you take it forward from here, and I will mute myself.
Brilliant, thank you. Lovely to see everybody. And in traditional kind of EEUK style, we're really keen to try and make this interactive. So we're going to be obviously hearing some great top tips, some benefits, and unexpected benefits, and hearing about people's case studies as ideas to help us prepare for September term and what we're going to do next and how things are going to unfold. So we'd really like this to be kind of interactive. I know in the room, in our virtual Zoom room, there's so much experience and lessons learned from very, very small things that worked really well to some really big major changes that people have had to do. So we really appreciate our speakers giving us their time. So I would like to say thank you to all these people that stepped up and said, I'll share my story. But we're really grateful that you're here today to share your story and to add in your contribution. So we'd really like to say thank you very much to everyone that's joining us today, and I'd really like to try and get a written output from this, so I'll be taking notes to capture things, and if you can write anything in the chat, it will make it easier for me. So we will be looking for your top tips as well as your questions. So as I said, thank you very much to our speakers. You'll be hearing from all of these guys later on, and we're doing really short inputs, so we're hoping to keep it punchy, keep it sharp, but give you time to ask questions and actually find out some of the things that you really want to know, like, that sounded great, I've got 300 students, is that going to work? So actually ask what you want to know. This is really practical and really designed to help each other. So if you haven't already, we'd like you to say hello, see some familiar faces, see some things connecting up people who haven't seen each other for a while, but as always, we like to welcome in new people. So if you're joining us and you've not really met many people, you can say hi and what your responsibility area is. Tell us your member institution and just use the chat as somewhere to connect with each other as well. But as I said, my role today will be kind of running the slides, keeping everybody to time, but also I would like to, before I bring Kelly Smith in, ask you if you've got a top tip, or if you hear something that they say, that a speaker says, and you think that's real genius, that's really helpful, then actually that's brilliant. If you write TT and then what they've said, or the thing about doing this with Zoom, anything that you put, I will acknowledge you in the document that we create, and it'll make it really brilliant if you hear other people saying stuff that solves some of your problems or gives you inspiration. So hopefully you found the chat, you're all good to go, and I'm going to ask Kelly to speak to us now. Kelly, that's her photo on the slide because she's actually a fellow of EEUK, so we're delighted to ask Kelly to unmute and to give us a little bit of insight into what they've been doing in the University of Birmingham.
I hate seeing me, it's terrible. Thank you though, Alison. Hi everyone, I'm Kelly. Currently working at the University of Birmingham, moved there in January. So it was a bit of baptism by fire. I had a brand new module given me, creating it effectively from scratch. It was an MBA module called Entrepreneurship New Firm Growth. So quite a traditional MBA module. It was primarily about entrepreneurship, but the way I am, I always try and get at least 4 entrepreneurship within there as well. So it was learning about entrepreneurship, but also hopefully for those who were studying, to give them some flavour about what they might need to do if they wish to start up a business of their own in the future. So I've just started at Birmingham. I have started to prepare my lecture, and then this thing called coronavirus hit. This particular module was due to be face-to-face block teaching over 1 week, starting on the 16th of March. So there was meant to be about 23 hours solid lecturing with some interactive group work, working through case studies, but primarily me at the front of the screen talking to slides. So all of a sudden, we have to, you know, although the 16th of March was approaching, and the UK government was not looking to lock down at that particular point in time. But obviously, I think most of us were aware something huge was going on in the world. And so I was keeping an eye on this and really kind of thinking, oh my goodness, I think I'm going to have to move this online. The 16th of March, again, was approaching. The week before, our University of Birmingham, told students that although lectures would continue, if they needed to go home, they should, and to not worry about leaving the university and being there face to face. So my students on the MBA module were contacting me, wanting, a lot of them were international students wanting to go back to their home countries. And so on the 13th of March, we made the decision to move to an online only delivery. 3 days, effectively. So the decision was made 3 days before this was due to be presented. So I had to make some really, really quick decisions. Decisions I made is that I wanted almost all of the learning to be asynchronous. So to allow students to look at the materials and work through them in their own time without any need to be physically present, well, virtually present, online at a set timetable slot. The reason why I made this decision was because students were going to be travelling back to their home countries, going to be travelling throughout the UK, they were going to be unsettled. And I really didn't think it was fair on them, or even on me, to be brutally honest, in this period of unsettlement, to have to arrange to be present at a set time. I have had some experience of online learning or online teaching previously, and I'm a big fan of discussion forums, individual reflections and group discussion tasks to try and elevate up that higher learning element. And I also made the decision that I wasn't going to have any broadcast lectures. So even if I was going, you know, so I wasn't going to put up any pre-recorded lectures. The reason for this mainly was I didn't have any. So 3 days to go, there was no time to pre-record 23 hours worth of lectures. I didn't have anything from a previous year because I was brand new at this particular university. And so all I had basically were my PowerPoint slides to start with. Next slide, Alison. So what I've done here, you'll see an awful lot of text. 3 slides were all we were allowed, so I've crammed everything in. I do apologise. So there's 3 sections here. The first section, quick fix, was what I did immediately in order to go live, as it were, online from the Monday onwards. Now, I didn't have everything sorted out by the Monday. That was just impossible. So kind of what I did is as much as possible for the Monday, and then worked on it during the day and released each lecture that I was going to do live at a set time each day that students were made aware of in advance. So the quick fix was what I had to do very, very, very quickly. Once I'd done the quick fix, I then did the enhancing process, which was over the next 2 weeks, went back and updated as much as I could. And then the third section is what I would, having learnt what I've learnt, is what I intend to do next year. So for the quick fix, for me, it's really important that students saw me. They knew who I was. Now, I hate being on video. I hate my photograph. There's very few photographs out there of me because I literally hide. But it's so important for students to know this is me, and here's me as an educator. And so first thing I did was recorded just a little mini video of me on my iPhone. So I sat on a hotel room on the Sunday night before this was all due to start, recorded a video. I have to do it this way around, recorded a video of myself on my iPhone, uploaded it to YouTube just to say hello and to talk about how we were going to move on. Towards the end, I also did another video of me talking students through their assessment. So it's me, and I'm going to be your educator, and we're in this together. I had copious amounts of lecture slides because that was the basis of this particular format, in face-to-face format we were originally going to do. When you look at lecture slides, I mean, you'll see in these particular lecture slides, there's an awful lot of text, but quite often you'll see in my slides, I'll just have a photograph in there. I'll just have an image because I talk to that image. Now that's great if I'm here in front of you talking you through. If you're reading through a set of static lecture slides and you come across an image, you've got no idea what that's trying to tell you. So I went through and I removed any content from lecture slides that didn't make any sense without having me talking students through it. I then included in those lecture slides references to discussion forum tasks. So you'll be having content, and then you'll have see lecture 1, discussion task 3. And then students would know, hopefully, to go to the discussion forums, look at that particular task. And so we'd have some content, discussion slide, in discussion prompt, and students would then go to the discussions forums to discuss issues around the content they'd had presented. I had about 3 and 5 individual reflection tasks or group discussion tasks per block of 2 or 3 hours worth of lecture. Because there was quite a bit of content delivery, normally I would talk beyond the lecture slides. Here I needed students to go and do reading for themselves. So we had an online reading list and any content had a citation at the bottom and students can then go and read that work for themselves and were encouraged to do so. And then for every lecture, there was a general any questions discussion space in addition to the discussion forums talking students through the content. There was additional forums to ask about the assessment. I just used so many discussion forums. Not all of them were students engaged with, but they were there if they were needed and they all had a set purpose. So that's what I did immediately. That was the quick fix. But I was very conscious that probably wasn't sufficient. Or at least I wanted to do more. So we got through the first week. In reality, that first week was spread into 2 weeks because both students and I found it very, very difficult to present so much asynchronously in a new format when you weren't used to it in 1 week, which was the original plan. So everything was spread out over 2 weeks, but because I'd got everything done in the first week, I was then able to go into the enhancing phase. Having put everything I needed online, I then went back and I added in additional text notes into the lecture slides. So I had my content slide and then cut some notes where it was relevant. So I tell stories when I teach. I ask for opinions. So if I was bringing in my own personal learning points, my experiences of working with student and graduate entrepreneurs, any stories, how I had learned the concepts I was presenting, I would then type that into the notes as further information. Still very much PowerPoint based, but using those notes. I searched for additional resources, news articles, videos, anything to just remove some of the boredom and tedium of reading through PowerPoint slides. I also had a bit of fun. I created animations using VideoScribe. I've been wanting to use VideoScribe for years and had never really got round to it because there wasn't a purpose. Now I had a purpose. So I learnt a new piece of software and I did some animations to describe key concepts. So flow diagrams, for example, are really good to be able to talk through on an animation. We use Canvas at Birmingham, the virtual learning environment. So I had regular announcements. I talked to my students repeatedly. But I was very conscious that although one student in particular was very, very active, I had 12 students in total. It started off quite interactive and then it kind of dropped off. And I was very concerned that people, were they looking at my work? Were they actually able to find time to go into their learning resources? So I had a virtual learning environment widget, which allowed me to monitor engagement. And I would really recommend that. It put me at my ease because I could see that even if students weren't actively typing in the discussion forums, for example, I knew they were reading, I knew they were looking at the resources. So going on to next year, what I've learned from this is that I would never have so much lecture content. I had no choice, but you know, kind of, it's hard going through slide after slide after slide of a PowerPoint presentation, and it's not necessary. So what I would do is there's still important concepts to get over, and sometimes I think that's best done in a PowerPoint type version. So I may still have a very much smaller lecture content element talking through those key concepts. I'd look at alternative ways of presenting information. So having pages of narrative text with videos inserted rather than PowerPoint slides, for example. However, you know, kind of, we all use PowerPoint all the time. It's what we're comfortable with, and if that works, then I would always recommend you start with what you know in the first instance. And PowerPoint can be very useful. For example, you can record audio onto your PowerPoint slides. Now, it uses up copious amounts of space, so use it sparingly. And once you've done that, it may be worth you recording your PowerPoint as a video file and making that available to students.
Kelly, I'm going to push you to move to your key points because
Right.
we're really conscious that you can't be with us all morning, so I don't want to lose any questions
No.
as well.
So I was relying on you prompting me. So do you want to move on to the next slide?
Yeah, so just quickly and then we'll take a question if people have got anything.
So have I got time for this, or
like a minute?
Right, so the biggest thing I'm going to say is, and my biggest key point is, please make sure you've got asynchronous alternatives for absolutely everything. Students can find it really hard to engage, and particularly for synchronous side of things. I've really struggled for internet connection last week. I'm actually using 4G at the moment because my internet connection is really unreliable. And so you can't assume that everyone can be present at the same time. You can't assume everyone's going to be well. You can't assume that people won't have caring responsibilities. So asynchronous is absolutely key, but also where you can build in that synchronous element, because that will help develop communities and also potentially, if you use it well, raise the level of learning. So that's probably it. Apologies for going on for too long.
No, that's a brilliant top tip, and it's something actually we've been debating a lot in terms of how do you make sure things are equal, inclusive, can support everybody to engage. And as you say, over a whole term, you can't guarantee that people won't be in a house with somebody else who has a cough, even if they're well. How will they join in? So Kate, I don't know if there's anything while we have Kelly just for a couple of questions maybe.
I can see there's one question from Asif. They were full-time students.
Is there anything else? As I said, I've just got, I think, over 10 top tips for my record, so thank you very much for that. We've been picking up a lot of things. Is there anything, Kate, at this stage we want to ask Kelly? Because I do appreciate she does have to leave us.
I've just seen there's another question.
Yeah, brilliant.
Chat. How was my own experience? My own experience was mixed. I had some experience with online learning, so kind of the use of discussion boards I was quite comfortable with. However, I was using brand new to me technology, having just started at another institution, so I didn't know my way around Canvas. There was this thing called Panopto, which kept being mentioned. I knew nothing about it. And also it's very scary when you're feeling quite vulnerable, brand new at university, first time you're going to lecture, feeling judged, and then suddenly having to move to a totally different environment. So I was absolutely petrified at the same time as some elements feeling quite comfortable with. So yes, really, really scary, but it worked. At least it worked as well as it needed to. And one of the things I've definitely learned is you can only do what you can do. And if you do that to the best of your ability, that's it, really. That's all you can do.
Brilliant. That's wise advice to leave us on. I think, yeah, everybody that's joining us today has had some difficulties and some compromises and stuff, but this is what we really want to draw out is some of the things that have gone better. And I think for me, I'm taking away that top tip of making things available, but also finding that way to communicate and to connect and get them to engage. So really thank you for your time and your contribution, Kelly. I know you can stick around a little bit longer.
Yes,
so
yeah,
right,
I need to race off at 11 and then I'll try and come back again as soon as I can, but thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll be turning now to our next institution. So we're leaving Birmingham, heading to Sheffield Hallam. So if I can invite Asif to talk to us about some top tips. Again, busy screen, lots of stuff to share. So if you'd like to just give us a quick update on your learning.
Yeah, no problem at all. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity. And first of all, I want to apologise because they decided to dig up the road outside my house today, of all days. So it's one of those things that happens. Right, top tips. What I want to talk about is the enterprise module I delivered with my colleagues, Felicity Mendoza and Joe Watts. It's a 15 credit module to the executive part-time. So just put it into context what happened. The government decided that's it, we're going to have lockdown, and this module had to be delivered within the next sort of 2 weeks. So we didn't have much time, but also the teaching team were actually delivering other modules as well. So we didn't have that much time to spend on it. So it was quite sort of, let's put it, quite challenging to put everything together. So what I'm going to share is what the top tips are, what I've actually learned from it, what worked well, but also what we could have included. Right, first of all, it's quite important to have an assessment that's quite exciting, especially being an enterprise module. It needs to be quite exciting as well in that respect. So what we do is we normally send that out to the students beforehand so they can actually have a look at it and see what it's about. So it's about coming up with a business idea or an innovation within their organizations. Just something else, that there were about 30 students on this as well. So to give you the context of the amount of students, and they're all sort of working as well. Also the pre-work, we made sure that the pre-work did actually go out and give them something to do because we wanted them to be involved with the module. So we gave them some pre-work to take a photograph of an innovation or something enterprising. They could have looked at a newspaper and pulled off an article or something online. The idea was good, but I think we perhaps could have executed it better. We got some, some parts of the delivery where students did share that, but I think we perhaps needed somewhere where they could actually post it. And then we could actually go there and actually discuss the different sort of enterprising or innovative elements they saw in the environment. So I think that bit could have worked better. The other thing is we wanted the VLE space. So what we used is Blackboard at Sheffield Hallam. And what we wanted to do is make sure that the VLE space where all the activities were exactly the same as the schedule we sent out to students. The reason being because not all of the 30 students could attend. There were 5 students who said they couldn't make it because they had caring responsibility. So we needed to make sure it matched so they could actually follow the actual process of what was going on. Quite interesting, quite different to Kelly is that we decided to put a schedule in for each day. So starting at 9 o'clock and finishing at 5. And the reason behind that is that we thought they'll have a structure to the day so they know what's going on. The other thing is, even if they couldn't attend, they could do it on their own time and they'd have a structure as well. Yeah. And so we made sure it was 9 o'clock and finishing at 5. And moving on to the next point was that we made sure there was a live session at 15 minutes. So 15-minute live session at the beginning so we could introduce the day, and 30 minutes at the end so we could actually take question and answers. That's what all the 3 tutors will be on as well. Okay. Moving on, just going back a little bit to the next one. Yeah. We made a conscious effort to keep all interactions within the VLE space. So that was quite important. So it all had to be there as well. Okay. And the other thing is as well that we made sure we had live screencasts, we had discussion boards, breakout room, and we had activities as well. So we made it quite interactive, and each bit had to be different as well to keep it engaging. We didn't have multiple choice questions in there, sorry, quizzes in there, multiple quizzes in there. I think that perhaps if we had more time, could have included those as well. To keep the students engaged, we made sure that there had to be a 5-minute pitch that each student had to do at the end about their portfolio, because they had to do a portfolio and we had to make sure that they're engaged. And I tell you what, that session went really well on the Thursday afternoon, which was the last day. And we gave informative feedback as well. I was pleasantly surprised how well it went, which was really great to see. The other thing is that what we did is that we made sure that the assessment was different to a typical Word document they had to submit. So we used PebblePad, where they could present information in a video, images, audio, text, and that's what we use. And I've just had a look at some of those because I knew it was coming here, that some students are already working on it. It's not due for submission till next week. And some of the work they produce is excellent, absolutely brilliant. And the other thing we do is that we provide audio feedback on their assessed work as well. So they get it personalized instead of written text. And perhaps what we're going to do next time is perhaps even do a screencast of the work. So this work will be on the screen and we'll record it and just actually talk through what they've done well and what areas they can improve on to make it more personal to them as well. Okay. Just to finish off in terms of the feedback we received for from the students, we've got the feedback was that we were excellent. We've got the best feedback they can give, which was really good to see. And what they really appreciated was the interaction we gave. The actual interaction with the students was really, really good because we used the discussion boards, etc. And also kept it within the Blackboard, which is a virtual learning space, because going outside, going onto Zoom or anywhere else, the risk was we could have lost students if they couldn't actually log on or get on there. So if we kept it in the same place, but in different areas, that made it more interactive. And one other student said that they've learned more about the VLE space with our module than they've ever done over the last year and a half, which was really pleasing to see. So thank you very much.
Brilliant, that's been excellent, and some really, again, some great top tips in terms of not just the tech that you've explored, but also just that, you know, interaction, the connectivity, especially when we all got locked down, everybody was seeking that. So the fact that you provided it through a structured educational experience is obviously really welcome. But I don't know if there's any questions on the chat. I appreciate you also have to go, but I don't.
Yeah, I'm okay for now. Yeah, I'm okay for now.
Okay, is there just a question we want to take now?
There's a question from Linda. Difficult to catch it. Right, I don't think that is a question, actually. That's just a statement. Yeah. No, I can't see any questions there on the chat at the moment.
No, that's great.
For Asif.
Feel free. I was going to say, I'm madly writing my top tips and things, but I think, you know, just hearing your experience against Kelly's in terms of getting people to do things and using these different tech, but I agree in terms of housing it in terms of the VLE, so they all can find it. They can all access it. They've got a home. I like that you've both pulled a lot of things together in the structure so they know where to go, as if it was the lecture theatre or the room. They've got somewhere to go. So really appreciate
there is
that.
One question. There is one question coming for Asif. Just a quick one about managing learners with caring responsibilities. Asif, do you have a quick answer for us on that?
Really good question. Right. What we did, because we had 5 students who couldn't actually attend. Yeah, because they had caring responsibilities. So what we did is the way we structured the VLE space and each day, then they could do that in their own time. Okay. And the second thing is that we, a week afterwards, they can do a 1-page outline of their portfolio that they can submit to us. We allow them to do that as well, so we can give them personal feedback as well if they need it. But it's a good question, is that that's why the VLE space needs to be structured in a way that even if you haven't attended, it's easy to follow and everything's on there, and it's systematic in that sense.
Brilliant, thank you. I got recommended to put it in terms of weeks because that's how people think, not in the terms that you would normally structure your timetable, like that's a seminar and that's a lecture, because actually the students are logging on and they want to know, what should I have done? I missed that week, and that's how they're thinking. So those kind of things are really helpful. So thank you very much, really appreciate it. I'd like to take us to Huddersfield, where we've got 2 sessions, which ideally we're going to do back to back and then take some questions. So if that's all right, I'll be asking our Huddersfield colleagues to step up again as their fellows. They get their photos up, so thank you very much. So I'll give you the floor.
Morning everyone, and thanks very much, Alison. That's quite alarming to see that photo actually, but anyway, thank you. So Phil here. This first case study is going to outline a scenario, and over 3 slides we'll give you first of all the context of the problem that we were facing and how we were going to deal with that online. The second slide will tell you a little bit about the approach that we took and what the response was. And the third slide will tell you that as a result of that surprising response, kind of the direction that we are now going in. So this is an extracurricular, or I suppose technically intra-curricular setting. We run an enterprise placement year for 3rd year undergrads as an alternative to going out for a traditional employed placement in industry. The problem that we faced was that over the last 3 to 4 years, we believe that we improved the recruitment process for this by having a "Is it right for me" day. Before that, students would apply, we'd look at their applications, we would review it, we'd meet with them, but to suddenly make the decision that during a placement setting they were going to start a business without potentially knowing what the implications of that were going to be, made that sometimes you perhaps gave a student a place when it wasn't appropriate for them. Having this "Is it right for me" day gave them the opportunity to actually test out some of the things they would find during the course of the year, experience those challenges, and hopefully at the end of it, make a more informed decision. So the challenge we had was that we were going to have a number of students who had applied for this, and we were going to have to give them a lot of information about what an enterprise placement year looked like. They were going to do some things that would give them a feeling of what an enterprise placement year might feel like in terms of challenges. And we also wanted them to meet some current enterprise placement year students, because whilst we could tell them what the structure was and what it looked like, the current students could tell them what it actually felt like. And we always felt that that was really important. And over the last 4 years since we've had this process in place, the engagement and the response from the students suggests that this is a really important aspect of our recruitment process. So the challenge was, how are we going to get all of this information to them when we can't be in the same room as them and facilitate all of this interaction? So that was our challenge. I think Catherine's going to take over now with what we did.
Yeah, hi everybody, Catherine here, I hope you're well. So Phil has set the overall context and said something about enterprise placement year and how we were taking the recruitment online. And I'm just going to drill down to a particular element of that. So when we do face-to-face enterprise placement year recruitment, we have a session typically just before lunch where we get enterprise placement year students in to talk about their own experience, as Phil said, tell them how it feels, tell the applicants how it feels to be on enterprise placement year. And then we invite applicants to ask questions of those current students and to also network and find out information from those students over the course of lunch. And the picture on the right is our kind of hope and imagination of what happens in that session that, you know, people go over to where the sandwiches are and they chat and share experiences, and the applicants are learning from the enterprise placement year students. But what does often happen is that many applicants just sit rooted, terrified to their chair, wait to go over to the sandwiches until the current students have moved away and started talking for us. So this idea of facilitating networking and those applicants asking their own questions of the students doesn't necessarily come to the best fruition when it's face to face. So the approach this year was, of course, we're in COVID times, we can't have the face-to-face delivery, and we can't have the potential networking, and we're not, you know, sneezing over sandwiches together and all of that kind of stuff. So everything was taken online, and for this particular element of the provision, we had 4 enterprise placement year current students come on a Zoom, where all the applicants were also on a Zoom, so everybody was online at the same time, and we had a fireside chat where the 4 students were facilitated to talk through their stories, and the enterprise placement year applicants were facilitated to ask questions. So how that worked was Phil was the kind of compare, inviting the students, oh, can you just kick us off and tell us a little bit about your year and your business? And then we also encourage the applicants to ask questions in the chat box. And what we found, surprisingly, was that instead of people feeling awkward and not asking their own questions, that this process of comparing and using the chat box really helped students to get their own questions out. And reflecting on that part of the session afterwards, we all thought that it was more successful in providing a forum for students to have a conversation than the face-to-face provision had been. And that was not necessarily completely unexpected, because maybe there's not that kind of physical anticipation and nerves of a face-to-face interaction, but it was definitely something that we were really interested in and wanted to keep. Over to you, Phil. Back to you.
Thanks, Catherine. So the realization that actually students that we previously had difficulty engaging in these types of conversations when we were all meeting in person was actually much more effective on Zoom, using both kind of me looking out for people waving and wanting to ask questions, and saying for the more confident people, oh, Catherine, that looks like you want to ask something of the group, to perhaps the less confident student who was very happy to sit back and type a question, potentially even doing it anonymously, because you can change your name in a chat box, you don't have to say who you are. This kind of made us think that we're actually inadvertently onto something potentially really helpful here, in that the whole range of different types of students, from extremely confident to very unconfident and perhaps more anxious, felt able to take part and leave that room with the information that they particularly wanted. We also managed to use the current enterprise placement year students that we already had good rapport and connection with as the conduit to sort of provide a lot of contextual information to those new applicants without them getting bored of our own voice. So actually having that change of dialogue, change of messaging, change of visual really helped. So what's that led us to conclude? Well, first of all, that we can save some money on sandwiches, because we don't need to provide lunch for these people when they're going to be terrified of eating it. But also the fact that this kind of fireside chat, as we've come to call it, because that mechanism seems to work really well, we've decided in our workshop series next year, which we've planned to be at the moment all online, to run a mini series called Inspire Me Too. And the Inspire Me Too can be sort of followed by any particular context. But for instance, inspire me to take an enterprise placement year would be similar lines to what we've just described. Inspire me to join a society. What that's going to look like is to have some students who are already members of various student union societies coming in, explaining their experience, talking about what it means to them to be a member of society, how it's helped them perhaps grow in confidence or develop employability and enterprise skills. So you can see how that sort of framework of what we did in that session has inspired a range of future activities and this mini-series. I think that's it, but I should conclude by saying that obviously we've based this on our own very personal programme. I know many of you also run these type of years, they're increasing in popularity, but I think any programme of activity that requires you to go out, describe what that programme looks like and encourage students to think about joining or taking part, this process could be adapted and used for that. So I guess that's our mini case study, and we're happy to take questions.
Yeah, I was going to say,
we're doing after. We're doing
yeah,
after.
we'll stay in Huddersfield while we're here, and we'll be bringing in colleagues to talk about the other side of your activities. So if I can ask Sarah and Lee to join us, and then we'll talk all about your experience. So again, if anyone has any questions that they want to log with Kate now, they'll be picked up before we break for our mid-morning coffee. So Sarah, Lee, if you'd like to just share your side of the Huddersfield story, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. Oh, hi there. Can we have the first slide up, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. So my name is Sarah Agard-Brennan, and I'm new to enterprise education. I'm working in universities, so you probably haven't seen my face before. I come from a commercial background, having run my own companies for the last 25 years, and I've pitched on Dragon's Den and done some kind of like higher profile pitching. So I want to talk to you today about a pitch club that I wanted to set up when I came to the role at the University of Huddersfield. I want to give you a little bit of background as to why that happened. So you've obviously heard this before, everybody has a moment in life. I know for me, starting my own business and running a business has been those moments. So you want to give the person running the business the best chance of succeeding and give yourself the best chance of succeeding. And learning to tell the story of you or your business does facilitate that success. And it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, really, that we learn all about our business and we learn to communicate that, and yet so many people don't do it. And this concept of pitching is very much a buzz over the last 10, 15 years because of The Apprentice and Dragon's Den and other higher profile TV shows that have put it into the spotlight. So my experience of meeting our recently graduated EPY Enterprise Placement Year students was definitely interesting. I met them when I first started working in November 2020, but I hadn't really talked and interacted with a lot of them. So the first time I got really to know about their businesses, they were pitching to us. And I was sat there with my colleagues and I was really excited because I love pitching. And perhaps now looking back, I was probably a little bit too excited and I probably didn't really understand the level of pitching students have compared with the commercial world. So we'd invited in Leon Doyle, who is a serial entrepreneur who's appeared on The Apprentice and Dragon's Den, and quite inspiring chap, very dynamic. He was looking to really kind of get to grips with what we were doing and maybe even offer some mentoring. So I was really excited for the possibility for the students. And I can see now that I was probably, I'd set myself up for a fall basically, because we had an information overload. Too many slides, too much information, and a lot of nerves from the students. And whilst the content was really good, what they weren't doing, they weren't putting it into a format that was easy to understand for somebody who'd never come into contact with them or their businesses before. So it really troubled me. And I came out of that going, okay, what can I do? Because I'm a fixer, I'm one of their life's fixers. I love a challenge, I love to try and think around things. So I felt like they were missing some really fundamentals, which I'd learned through practicing pitching every week, every couple of weeks in a group format. And I feel like it would really help them to get some feedback, regular feedback, so they can work bit by bit on it, like take baby steps. Things like the storytelling, the hook, the bold narrative, just expression, body language. There were so many things that I wanted to pass on to them. And as you can probably tell, I am super passionate about pitching. And that's because I came late to the pitching party. I was 20 years running my own business, telling everybody, you don't need to pitch. What do you need to pitch for? I can talk, I can waffle, I could sell, but you'd have to give me 20 minutes to sell you something. And what I realized, there was like a eureka moment when I learned to pitch. It was like, so I can get a sale in 60 seconds. Wow, okay, I'm wasting a lot of energy here. And so that was really where I started my journey. And then, like any salesperson, I wanted to perfect it because I wanted to generate that sale. And as for me, the sale was, I went on Dragon's Den and I was successful. So I really wanted to pass on that knowledge and wisdom. And of course, Phil, being the wonderful boss that he is, because he is, I grabbed hold of him and said, Phil, can we talk? Can we talk? Any chance I could set up a pitch club? And he could just see I was bursting and I really wanted to get this off the ground. And him and my colleagues, wonderful colleagues at the University of Huddersfield, agreed to allow us to set up a pitch club starting in 2020 every other week. So if you'd like to just pop the next slide on. And this is us. The first picture you can see to your left is where we had it in our hub, in our place. And as you can see, it's very informal. Everybody sat round. We've talked about fireside chats. That's what we wanted it to be. We wanted it to be about people asking questions, offering feedback to one another. We invited along. You can just see I'm kind of sat there in a terribly granny cardigan, but I do love it. And I was sat next to Kira Hardy from Skate It Yourself. Now, for anybody who knows the Santander University competition would know that he came, he won a prize last year, a significant amount of money for pitching. So I felt that he was a great inspiration for the students to know where they could take this. And basically, we just kind of went with it, really. It was just very informal. This was our very first one. And as you can see, a group of apps called Indie Shark Games got up and actually pitched, which I wasn't expecting whatsoever. And I'm going to hand over to Lee now, who'll tell you about our next part of the journey.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Okay, so what we did with Pitch Club is obviously take it online. But before we just go online, it's worth saying, and as Sarah's been identifying, that this is quite new for the students. I come from a lecturing background, so students are used to presenting for 5-10 minutes at a time, and actually working towards a 60-second format was so new for them. What I loved about Pitch Club before it even went online is that we were trying to break the rules a bit in terms of how we sat, in terms of how we ran it, the informality, but also very, very clear guideline. And the one clear guideline that we took from being in the room together to going online was 60 seconds, the importance of the 60-second format. So we went online, and then what also became important was the wording that we had Pitch Club. Now, sometimes I enjoy being parts of clubs and sometimes I don't, but there are two important things with the word club. First of all, it's about a thing, and the thing has always been pitching, but clubs also give you a sense of belonging. And we felt that as we went online, we needed to stress that relationship of belonging between us and the students, their EPY year, and the fact that we are enterprise. This is all part of the enterprise team. So I've got to say, and Sarah and I chat about this quite a bit, we needed this. We needed Pitch Club as much as the students. We needed to know that they were okay wherever they were living, whatever they were doing. But we also took a keen interest in developing their skills. But the belonging was quite crucial. So sticking to 12:30 to 1:30 time slot, we stuck to that. And the benefits of going online is we can now send them an invitation. And sometimes they got invitations from us. Sometimes they got additional emails from the team saying it's really important to go. So there was that real sense of be there, come and be there. You go online and you realise that we're not all ready to learn. And what Kelly and Asif was saying earlier on about the idea of, or the challenges of being synchronous, is it took a few weeks, lots of help from Nicola getting tech out there to students to make sure that everybody could be seen and heard. And so there's an important thing here in terms of online learning about readiness to learn. And also quiet spaces. We might all be in noisy houses. It might be really, really difficult. So it took a little while for us to adjust and to ensure that actually everybody could be part of this. We stuck to the 60-second format, but as we worked online, we started to innovate a bit more. We tended to give a lot of feedback. Sarah, myself, Phil and Nicola, so we're coming on and joining the students. But Sarah identified, well, let's get students to give observations and questions to one another. So as they came on each week to do their 60-second pitch, they were also paired with somebody who would give them feedback. So an unplanned benefit from this is we're developing pitching skills, but we're developing feedback skills amongst them. So it really started to enhance their relationships, making good listeners as well as people successful at pitches. But what really helps that hour be so powerful for everybody to have their time to get that pitch across was also behind the scenes. Sarah and I were emailing each individual student, giving them one-to-one feedback and giving them something to think about the following week. So we might say to some of our students, or one or two of our students, how about thinking about the lighting? How about thinking about showing or demonstrating a product? So we were actually getting them to experiment with other parts of presentations, but also moving them on. So we're getting that feeling that by attending and by repeating, that actually they were moving on. And I'm a huge fan of action learning, and actually what the online experience did was allow a community of people working on the same thing, but to work at their own speed on the things that they needed to work on. And actually we could accommodate all of that. And that comes back to the 60-second slot, but also behind the scenes, the feedback process. Just to finish up on that, you might be looking at these mugs and thinking, what's going on there? We just used something like a mug. I know other ideas of warming up or having an icebreaker might be to show an innovative product, but I had a collection of mugs. And so what we did every week, just to get everybody chatting and into the space, was give out clues as to the identity of the mug based on the nature of the product. So it could be Divine Chocolate or Smarties, and slowly raise the mug into view and somebody would guess it correctly. And it was a chance to clap, applaud, attune to one another and to be ready for learning. Okay, so the key learning points: readiness to learn. There's a psychological stuff, but there's also the technological stuff, allowing people to go at different speeds and sensing their own development. And it was truly collaborative. We talk about collaboration a lot, but it's not always the easiest thing to make happen right across the community. I'll hand back to Sarah now, who's going to talk a little bit about other outcomes.
Very quickly, if I can press you, thank you.
Yeah, just very quickly, although we didn't set out to encourage them to go off and enter competitions and win, they did. And as it happens, there was a series of competitions in lockdown and just before lockdown, which allowed them to test their newly learnt skills. And we had some winners, and these are our winners. Indie Shark Games, the guys, at the moment, they were our overall enterprise placement year winners for the best pitch. And we've got Student Union competition winners as well as the 2-minute pitch winner. There we are. Thank you very much for listening.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Kate, as you're just putting together questions for all our Huddersfield colleagues, I just think that's been really rich, and I just love all the stories of the unexpected interactions and the personalisation. So Kate, I don't know if there's any questions to share.
Yeah, so there was a question in the chat a little way back now when Phil and Catherine were talking from Caris, and it was, do you record the chats? And if so, do you find it inhibits contributors?
We haven't recorded the chats actually, and so we haven't had that experience in terms of inhibiting them. We actually, I don't know if it was necessarily because we weren't recording, but as I say, our experience was that the chat facility enabled people who were perhaps less confident to actually wave at the camera and say, I've got a question, to articulate their concern, and to do so that Catherine, who was monitoring the chat, could say, oh, there's a couple of questions coming in on this theme. Please, could you say something about that? So I think, if anything, it enabled more people to engage.
Okay, thank you. And then there are a couple of related questions come in from Linda and from Faye. Is it only EPY students invited to pitch, or is it everybody? But also, I'll ask the same one at the same time from Faye, do all pitchers have a business idea from the start, or do you have participants who just joined to develop their skills?
Lee and Sarah, do you want to take this, because it's Pitch Club?
Sure, yeah. Okay, thanks. In terms of the first question, is it just EPYers? It didn't start out that way offline. And so it was marketed and promoted across the university. But as we went online due to COVID, we thought it was most appropriate to actually keep with the EPYers because there was something else there about people who had been working together in a shared space being broken up and moving back to their homes and being apart, and we felt it might be too complicated to combine all the different needs. But what we'd like to do with Pitch Club is open it back out again and take Pitch Club on tour to different schools and to do particular interventions. Sarah, do you want to come in?
Yeah, can you just remember what the second part was?
Yeah, it was, do all the participants have a business idea, or do they just come along to learn the pitching skills?
You can just come along. In fact, actually, that's what we were encouraging people to do, to learn to pitch themselves. So in the early stage, stages of going online, and also whilst we were in the hub, we were just encouraging people to come along and do a 60-second pitch on something that's happened to them with COVID, so like a new hobby or anything they want to talk about for 60 seconds, just to kind of get them to feel more comfortable. And then as it progressed, we encouraged them, and we went exclusively with EPY, we encouraged them to start to kind of look at their business and do that more. But you don't know, in fact, actually, when we take it on tour, we're going to do it with lots of different schools for lots of different purposes. So it's very adaptable, really.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any more questions coming at the moment, so I'll hand back to you, Alison. You're mute, Alison.
Oh, there's always one, isn't there?
There's always one.
So I just want to share the kind of top tips that I've been capturing so far. So to start off with, I was trying to just think about some of the benefits that we're seeing. And I'm really, I suppose, on one hand, quite excited that people have got stories to share about things that have happened that were better than they might have been. So I think the fact that the chat focus and that ability to ask questions online really mirrors actually an EEUK guidance special that we did, where we actually interviewed some students, and they raised the issues that we all should know, that the things that you witness in classes, the difficulties, the times when you go and join a group because they need some support or focus, or somebody's dominating and you can clock that in a working space, those are the sort of things that happen online. So in our EEUK interview, some of the students said they would be put in a particular room, like a Zoom breakout room. Everybody's screen is off, everybody's microphone is off. They wait for 10 minutes and they went back to the main thing. And you would clock that in a room of people and you would go and work with them. But you need to still work the room, the Zoom room, or whatever your VLE is. So I think those lessons are kind of really powerful in terms of understanding that nothing is really, the kind of core principles stay the same. Your good practice needs to be taken online, but then you can have these unexpected benefits where people are able to ask questions who wouldn't normally, or as Kate's doing, she's seeing the themes come in and then able to ask that as a kind of joint question, and also pick up on some of the specifics that maybe somebody wouldn't actually ask. You know, a real specific question like how many people was that? So today we've had a question like, was it full-time students? You know, is it just pitching real specific, like how would I do that? Things that you wouldn't feel comfortable maybe asking if this was, say, the IEC auditorium, you get to ask in a chat room. So I think, you know, that kind of level of sharing is really rich and helpful in terms of seeing how we can make this more responsive, but we do need to consider, again, going back to the points that Kelly made about how people could interact, her own issues of having to do this, you know, without Wi-Fi this morning, but still being able to join us. That's probably not a cost-effective thing you can ask students to do. So where will they be getting their Wi-Fi from if there's no coffee shops open as there wasn't, and all that kind of stuff? It's like recognizing that your students have real issues in accessing real-time content is something that's really key. So I don't know if there's any comments from our speakers that want to share anything that either I didn't let them say. I know Kelly's gone, she was the one I really trimmed down on. But I think this whole thing about risking yourself in terms of speaking is something that actually working online can support. So I think that's kind of something we should really build on. Lee, you're nodding your head. That's obviously something that really came out of your input.
Yeah, I think so. I think just going back, that 60-second format just reduced the stakes of it being too long. And also this idea of, as Sarah was saying, come with a concept or a rough idea, or you can give us 60 seconds on your particular route to market. And we talked about it being a safe space. Pitching Club felt like a safe space.
And I think those kind of guidelines are really important. So, you know, Phil was talking about whether it's recorded or not recorded, in answer to the question from Caris, and I think that's really important, is that whether you are or you aren't, it's clear to people what they're engaging with. Phil, again, do you want to?
Yeah, what do I want to comment on that? I think the thing that we found was that because the format unexpectedly created so many more questions than it had done in person, it just kind of reassured us that it was the right direction that we were going in, because the kind of stilted conversation over lunch in person compared to this, where we actually had to say, I'm sorry, we have no more time. We actually had to close the session because there were so many questions and so many interactions. Just gave us that level of reassurance that it was the right direction. I suppose that's all I want to add, really.
But I think that's really powerful reassurance, because as enterprise educators, I know we've all spent our whole kind of careers trying to put people in groups, trying to connect people up, trying to like disrupt the room and change the tables round. And as we saw in those pictures of Huddersfield, sit on the table, sit on the chair, work with each other. We have spent our time looking for ways to disrupt what we would have seen as traditional teaching. And now we're all looking at the same thing, and quite often not in ideal circumstances. So I think that's when there's concern that we might not be able to respond, but you've obviously shown that we have. Kate, I think there's a question.
Yeah, there's a question coming from Fiona. Thanks, Fiona. How do you ensure that students are genuinely participating in live sessions and not merely dialing in?
Well, I suppose in the case of our EPY recruitment, we had a finite number of people that had been invited into that, and everyone came to that. So that was another point, that people had actively engaged at the time where they would have been coming onto campus to meet us in that room. They came, obviously we communicated this, but they came to the Zoom. So we had a finite number of people for that. Pitch Club is slightly different because it's a club and it's their choice as to whether they come or not each week. I don't know if Sarah or Lee want to comment on that.
Yeah, we kind of noticed very quickly within the first couple of sessions that there was an element of dialing in, do my 60 seconds, zone out. And that's when Lee and I introduced the buddying up system. And not, it wasn't intentional, but perhaps maybe it was subconsciously. We didn't have people run back to back who were buddied up together, so they had to pay attention and wait for that person. And actually, I think Lee will tell you, within the first week of doing that, it completely changed the dynamic. We gave them a reason to watch each other and interact with one another and take part. And very quickly, I think Lee will probably say something on that. It worked well.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. It worked really well because I think giving feedback is actually really tough. We find it quite difficult. It's a pretty tough task. So you've got to be an active listener. And quite often the person giving the feedback wanted to do two things. They wanted to say something supportive, and so therefore kind of give that observation statement, but also ask those all important questions that a potential customer or investor would ask. So, I mean, it was really developmental. They got very good at giving feedback. And I think Sarah and I would often say, you've been great at giving feedback this week. You've been really good at that. And that was just as important as the pitch at times.
Maybe just to add to that on the idea of dialing it in a face-to-face situation, it's possible for students for all kinds of reasons to look like they're dialing it in, and they might not be fully participating in a face-to-face session because they're, you know, they're feeling anxious, or, you know, they're stumbling over their words. So I think maybe what this whole experience of taking provision online has drawn attention to is that different types of provision, different types of students are going to respond to different types of provision in different ways. So if you're a person that gets really anxious or disengages in a face-to-face situation, or just sits back because the dominant person is rolling over you and you can't be bothered to deal with it, then it might be that these online mechanisms bring that person to the fore more. So yeah, it's just being realistic. No delivery mechanism is going to be perfect for every student, but what we're learning is what online, you know, what the benefits of online are. We were having a conversation the other day in the team, which was, even if life completely went back to normal in September, would we want to lose these online elements? And really the feedback was, no, we'd want to keep some of them because they have benefits that we didn't know about before.
And that's really powerful, isn't it? I mean, that's not where we thought we would be within 3 months. So that's really amazing and a testament to the work that you've done. Just going to highlight, in the last EEUK blog that we did, there was a lot of discussion in terms of things about having different roles for students. So the role that we've given to Kate to moderate all the chat, you can actually allocate these kind of roles to students so that they have an active role to undertake, but it's not necessarily their views that they're sharing, they're not asking their own questions, but they're the person that you work with, so that there is a dialogue between you and your scribe or your moderator. Phil, I think you've got experience of this you just want to share.
Well, actually, it was just, I've just noticed a few questions popping up about icebreakers, and I just wanted to respond to that, if that's okay, because lots of people are saying about the importance of icebreakers, and I think these two different Huddersfield interventions used icebreakers in different ways. So with the pitch club, the icebreaker was Lee's guess the mug thing, but actually that became more about the social aspect of it, because they were a cohort who wanted to be together but couldn't be, and so it was about coming together, and they were kind of sharing that. They didn't need to get to know each other, so it wasn't that sort of icebreaker, but it was a social interaction before the work of Pitch Club started. Whereas with the Is It Right for Me Day, they were people who didn't know each other, and so we did use an icebreaker there, and we kind of modelled it. We actually just talked about a positive and a negative experience that had come out of the whole COVID thing, but we started by doing it ourselves as a team. So we just said a positive and a negative thing, and then every student that was joining the club joined in, and that gave them that opportunity to say something and feel they had a framework to hang it on.
Brilliant, that's really helpful. So
Alison, there's just one, I know we need to break now, but there is a question.
I need to live on coffee as well. So
yeah, there is a question. I'm not going to open this question up now, but people might be able to reply to it in the chat. We have partially covered it already, whether students might be inhibited by being recorded. But in addition to that, Paul Kirkham is asking, who owns the copyright if there is a recording done? So I'll leave that hanging in the air. If anybody's got any response to that they can put on the chat, then that would be great. But Alison, back over to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, just in response to that, I think this is the time to check your institutional advice. And so again, that's one of our kind of fundamental piece of advice from EEUK, is you're working within your institution's BLE, everything is recorded and tracked. They will have permissions and expectations and the ways that they're working. So our first recommendation is that you know what your institution is offering in terms of either support for access and the tech, but also what's kept and allowed to be kept and shared, and obviously what can be made public and things. So all that, I know a lot of people have tried lots of different technologies to see what works, but there is a benefit of working within your own institutional structure, so it's tracked and recorded and available as a record for all students. So I'd recommend people check some of their institutional guidance, but it'd be great if we could share some of that. But I think my kettle's going on, so I'm going to say, yeah, I'll see everybody back at half past, if that's great. So 15 minutes to get a brew, and I'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
Hello, colleagues from Oxford Brookes University who've just joined us. We'll be getting started again very soon. Hello, Clelia.
Hi. Hi, Kate.
So yeah, thanks very much to, I know people have got to go to other meetings that get called. Everything seems to happen very quickly these days. We can't put things in diaries and they just stay there anymore. It seems to be quite chaotic time. So we appreciate some colleagues have already presented and had to go, and we appreciate you joining because I understand Lydia's not very well. So we say thanks very much for stepping in. But we're delighted to be hearing from Oxford Brookes because one of the first institutions to share something that went up on the ECT toolkit. So it was really great to get that first-hand story out there from one of our members. So we really appreciate you, A, doing that, and B, joining us today. So thank you. Right, are we good to go? I think we're back on. So the format for the second section will be similar in as much as we'll be working through our excellent speakers, but asking you to contribute both top tips, but also questions into the chat. Kate's monitoring the chat, so even if you want to just pick up on a theme or an idea and just put like something about how does that work, Kate will be connecting some of these ideas and bringing them together. And very excited for this next session because we've got some great institutions. I can see we're getting ready, so I'll get the slides going. But also we're going to hear from the student voice, and then we've got a little bit more time just to talk through any of the lessons that we've learned and refer you to some resources or to hear what you need us to do next. So without further ado, we're going to go down south and join Solon Creative. So are you good to go?
Thank you very much, Alison.
Brilliant,
First of all, I'd like to say a big thank you to EEUK for giving me the opportunity to present today. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. Before I jump into the benefits of live streaming, I would like to, first of all, give a bit of context of why I'm delivering those benefits to you today. Now, Solon Creatives is a freelance and enterprise agency based in Southampton. We're part of Solon University. And as an agency, we're used to interacting face-to-face, whether it's with our students or with our clients or with other members of staff. It's always been in a physical space and face-to-face. So with the whole epidemic taking place, obviously that has forced us and our activities to go online. So what was the best place and best way to recreate that space as close as possible to the original one? That's through live stream for us. Now, I'll walk through those benefits that I personally have found through my students, but also to my colleagues as well. And if there are any questions, I'll take them at the end. Now, first and foremost, human and face-to-face interaction is more important than ever. We're all used to digital content way before COVID-19, but also during COVID-19, we've been attacked more with whether it's other free courses, people posting more often, whether it's official channels that we follow. Now, content is constantly thrown at us. So what's more important is to create that real personal face-to-face interaction to kind of differentiate between what is digital content and what is real connection. Now, for us as an institute and organization, live streams are the driving force in the digital world. This allows us to differentiate our regular content from the content that we want our audience and stakeholders to engage with more often. Now, most importantly, when you're creating content, especially now during the epidemic, is to create conversations and opportunities for communal engagement. In simple words, that means is you allow others to give feedback and engage with your content instead of you releasing content and just waiting for the next turn for another release to happen. So, create content that actually makes people want to engage with you and create conversations, because these conversations are basically your real life interactions as well. Most importantly, during live streams, do give participants and the rest of the audience time to participate and process. What does it mean is that you allow people to engage in a way that they're comfortable with. So as some of my colleagues mentioned in their presentations earlier today, we need to be mindful of other people. Some people will be very comfortable to go with a camera and a microphone on. Others would like to be at the comfort of their keyboard. So we need to kind of be able to capture that and engage with this process. Another tip here is when we host live events, normally we would have someone who presents and somebody who moderates. So what does it mean is you be engaging with someone face-to-face, but also you be engaging with somebody else in the chat. That means we cover all sides of online communication. diversify the content, share it on a regular basis. Now that we all work from home most of the time, I would say this is very important. Do not feel that you have to create one thing and you need to stick to it. With an agency, we try to organize different live sessions, and that allows us to not only engage with different people, but also to deliver different content, to see how people respond to our content, what works and what doesn't. And this is generally a practice in marketing as well. Be visual and personal. Generic content won't turn it into engagement. Again, this feeds into something I said a bit earlier. The content needs to be engaging, interesting. It needs to be captivating by eyes before people can engage with the meaning of it. I know this may sound a bit superficial in a way, but I think we eat with our eyes before we consume the content. So I think it does need to be on a level. Small bites of information of any sorts. Again, this is all goes back to what everybody else has said as well, because we're constantly delivering content online way before that, and even now we need to be mindful how much people can take on a daily basis as well. So the best way to do that is to present it in small portions and preferably make it engaging. And again, don't be afraid to ask what your audience wants to see in the future. This is the best way for you to know, in the organization and the team that you work with, what they should create, what you should be delivering, how you should be delivering, and most of all, at what times. I think timing, especially for live content, is very essential. You need to kind of try and find a middle ground that's convenient for you, but also that's the best way for students or the stakeholders that you engage with to be at. And most of all, use a variety of online productivity tools too. Do not just stick to one platform and deliver content. Again, there is so many other things, social media platforms, there is polls, you can share content. So do break those sessions and allow more of interaction in between, so that kind of creates a more of a realistic environment that you'd normally deliver when you're face to face. And these are my few tips of live streaming. So if there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to help.
Brilliant, that's really great. Thank you very much, Kate. I don't know if there's anything coming through that you want to just pick up.
Yeah, there's a really big question come in from Emily Davis about demonstrating the value of the work that we do. But I think this probably goes beyond just a question to CEO, really. I think it's probably a question, maybe we want to come back to that later, Alison, because I think that might be something that there's quite a bit of discussion around, and we might want to bring other contributors into that discussion, because it is a very big question.
Brilliant. Well, again, as everyone can see it, we can start to formulate some panel thoughts or crowdsourced discussion on that for later at the end. Is there anything else specific? I've got one, but I don't want to use privilege that my mic's unmuted.
There's one just come in from Caris. What upper limit of numbers works for interactions in live calls?
That's a really good question. Thank you for that. Now, what we've stuck to is 6. So what we do is normally we have up to 6 people on a live broadcast. And again, these numbers can change in terms of who can come in, who can come out. I think it's the best way because you can interact better with people. You can moderate content a bit better as well. And this way it's not overwhelming in terms of screen capacity. You can focus on your screen with maximizing who you can look at. So I think that allows the opportunity to kind of stick to a smaller group, get a variety of opinions, but also moderate it a bit better. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice. Right, great. Well, it sounds like we're starting to build a bit of a thread to come back to, but we're going to be bringing in Oxford Brookes to share their experience. And I'm going to be really tight with them on time because they've got slightly more slides. So we do appreciate that you've stepped in for Lydia, who's unfortunately not very well and can't join us. So thank you very much, because we're really keen to hear your experience. But as I said, I'm keeping tight time. So if I could hand over to you guys, that would be great. And thank you very much. That's been brilliant. Are you unmuted? Great, thank you.
Okay. Kat, should I go ahead and start?
Yeah, we can start.
Okay, cool. So we're going to talk to you today about how we adapted, essentially having the lockdown, imposed upon us. So before lockdown, really, we delivered many events in person. There could be one-off events, there could be festivals taking place over several days. but essentially every week we had at least one event happening on campus. And we didn't really have online events. Is that right, Kat, before?
No, not so much.
So our programs and our initiatives, they fall into several categories. So we have our Spark Awards, which are taking students through the ideation stage all the way to generating their business idea and testing it. So that program takes place over several weeks, and it culminates with a pitching event at the pub, and we normally have 60 guests at that event. We also have our Fuel program, which is for more advanced business ideas that have already been tested and that are needed in need of funding to get it prototyped and perhaps to the market as well. And again, that takes place over several weeks, and it culminates with a pitching event and gala dinner with typically over 100 guests. And we have a pot of funding of £20,000 that we share amongst the winners. In the summer, we run an accelerator program, and that runs over 8 weeks typically. We have programs happening every week. So the teams prior to COVID were using our co-working space, and they had events on campus as part of this program. So typically, we have monthly meetups, workshops, talks happening throughout the academic year. And in March, we had to very quickly take the decision to move all our events online. So if you move to the next slide, you can go ahead.
Problem here, how to engage our community without catering and free cookies. So problems that we were facing during COVID-19, obviously putting that kind of physical face-to-face classroom teaching onto a program online. Some of the teaching we were able to transition over, finding a way for our students though to deliver pitches in front of judges was a challenge. Again, with some of our events, finding a way to offer that interactivity that we'd get in our workshops and through our events. Our mentoring, again, how to deliver that kind of face-to-face, one-to-one that we offered, and monthly meetups. So obviously the idea of meeting up, that's now changed. Meeting up online versus meeting up in person. And then team working as well. We're quite an enthusiastic young team, and so we've had that transition into having all meetings online. And I think I'm going to quickly move into how we face some of those challenges and what we've actually done. On the next slide, thank you. So yeah, it's quite good that we come from talking about live streaming because that is something that we've definitely embraced. So I'll take you through some of the solutions and then Kalia, you can go through the next slide. So pitching events. So we've got, as you can tell, gone over to Zoom, done the whole Zoom background, and we set up our pitches for what would have been pitch at the pub. We then had pitch at the Zoom and had all of our pitches set up as panelists on that feature. So pros here, yes, we were able to reach a more international audience, a larger audience, and we're able to live stream that across some of our other platforms that we use, such as Facebook. And we were able to record that as well, I think important to note here in the pros, so that we could watch over that. And instead of just having some of the memories of photographs and recording pictures afterwards, we had the whole event that you can relive. Again, with Catalyst, so we have a lot of guest speakers coming through, and we used Zoom webinars feature for that. And we have a Moodle portal at the university that we've used to assign tasks to students. Pros of that, I haven't got the pros there, but I'm sure there are, Clelia.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Catalyst, as I said, is a startup accelerator program in the summer. So we have currently 9 teams on this program this year, and they come together every Monday with me as the host for these webinars, and I bring on guest speakers every week. And the way we run it is pretty much like this event. Everyone can see each other's video, and although the guest speaker will share some information, just like we're doing now, we always make these calls very interactive. We don't ask people to wait until the end of the presentation to ask their questions. We say from the beginning, when I welcome everyone on the call, ask your questions straight away. You can either write them down in a chat, or you can jump in and ask while the presenter is speaking as well, if there is something that you really want to contribute to. So there have been actually quite a lot of positives from my point of view, because sometimes when you get people in a classroom pre-COVID, I don't know, some people just like to sit in the back and are quite happy to be passive. And actually being on this call, being able to see everyone's face in a small area on my screen, if I find that someone is a bit quiet and I want to make sure they're following or they're understanding what we're talking about, I can jump in and say, oh, Kat, did you have any thoughts about this, or what do you think? It'd be helpful for you to know. And we can really make use of that technology to encourage and foster that interaction that sometimes can't happen in the classroom. So I've found it actually easier in some ways. Yeah. Over to you, Kat.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with that. And when streaming regularly as well, so we would have key dates for our events in a calendar, but now we have moved over to doing kind of weekly streaming. So we're doing our weekly webinar series, which we just decided to go ahead and do in June, and we've now ended up doing that weekly, running just over into August. So we've been able to move into a broadcast service rather than a physical kind of social service. And those webinars, again, they're live, they're done live weekly, but they are recorded, and we have now a bank of them. So we can say we've got more of an on-demand service than we had previously. So moving on to the next slide, I think is the last.
Yeah. So here are the examples of the solutions that we found. So for our mentoring meetings, again, we simply transferred the meetings online. Actually, for mentoring particularly, some of them were already happening online, because some of the people we mentor are not necessarily located, near to our university, based in London or elsewhere. So that was actually probably the easiest transition we had to make. But we have integrated our one-to-one mentoring meetings with our CRM system, which happens to be HubSpot for ourselves. So we keep records of all the meetings happening, the progress that is made. So even if we lose one of our mentors, for example, the next person coming and taking over these meetings can absolutely have access to a set of notes for what the mentee has been up to. We have our startup visa scheme for international graduates. So again, that has been moving very swiftly online, because we typically happen to deal with international graduates, and they may have gone back to their country by the time they reach out to us. So we have been using online meetings with them already. With regards to monthly meetups, so this is where perhaps it's not so easy to transition online. For these purely social events, networking events, where you just happen to, before, put a group of people in a room and you waited for these interactions to happen. That is perhaps a little bit more challenging online, because people expect more lectures and presentations online. But what we try to do is to, again, use sort of platforms like games or quizzes to create that interaction and that social link. So we don't just say to people, log in online on Zoom at 8 p.m. on Monday and have a chat with anyone on the call at the same time. We create a quiz or a game, and we really engage them with that fun element, and that is making them want to attend the event.
It's kind of setting the activity.
Exactly. And our team, we have daily huddles using Zoom. We use Asana for our project management, and we also have a WhatsApp group for any quick interactions that are needed. And I think there's just one last slide after this one. And these are just very quickly other resources that we do use on a daily basis. So MailChimp is our newsletter system, so we use that weekly. We have created a feature for, with regards to COVID, for any students or graduates of our university that have done a gesture towards helping. It could be, health, NHS staff, or anyone else that is in need due to COVID. So we have actually created some weekly news about this and shared that on our newsletter. We use SurveyMonkey and Google Forms for any type of survey. And at the minute, we're working on our annual HEPKI survey. We use our social media channels a bit more than usual because we tended to just post, pictures here and there on our social media. Now we create a lot more live events for people to join in on that, especially on Facebook and Instagram. And I mentioned earlier, HubSpot is our CRM system, which we have been updated. We've put a lot of effort into updating this to make sure that we capture the impact that we create. I think going back to the question earlier, we are also investigating making sure that we can provide information at any point throughout the academic year. We don't want to just wait until the end of the academic year anymore to report back to anyone. We want to have our CRM system up to date at any point so that we could provide quarterly impact reports, internally, and it could be public facing as well. The number of meetings we've held, the funding we've given away, job creation was supported, so anything like that is captured, and also the number of businesses that have been started and are still going on with our help. So that would be key in the future, to be able to report easily to any stakeholders. Yeah, that's it for me.
That's brilliant, because although we know a lot of things like TEF and KEF and REF have all been suspended or changed, we know they'll want to be tracking what we're doing, and keeping records of stuff is so important and more difficult when we're all in different places. So that's really brilliant advice. Thank you. Hey, have we got any questions?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions come in. How do you, or whether you monitor the use of those on-demand assets that you've created? That's from Diana at NTU.
So I can try and answer that, that's okay. So we had an existing online toolkit which lived on our website, and basically it's just given us a brilliant opportunity to expand and build that toolkit where we're using those resources. So at the moment it's just essentially a lot of videos, and we're using mainly YouTube to process those videos, just because it's quite easy to embed YouTube videos within a website and our website, and to have them on there categorized within that library of a resource. And then the next step will be trying to integrate some of them into our Moodle or Google sites that we have here that are linked to some of our programs, to then say, oh, hey, now we've got that, take that book off the shelf that we've done something on, say, social media marketing, I can then feed that back to the students.
Yeah, I think we always monitor, whenever these live events happen, we monitor how many people have attended it at that live moment. But as Kat said, we always record them as well. So we, in a few weeks or months' time, we'll be able to track how many views that video overall has gathered beyond the live dates. And also we'll just be looking to integrate some of these online resources in our programs for the next academic year, because we've been having these webinars since March and going into August. So we'll have a fantastic bank of online resources that we can reuse as and when needed.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. And Penny has asked, do you have any online games you use that you would recommend?
So we mentioned Kahoot, which is like an app that facilitates quizzes. So that was really interesting to use, because we did the actual kind of speaker of the quiz part over video, over Zoom, but the interactive part where you see the questions and then you pick an answer. So that was all done through the Kahoot app as a quiz game in itself. So then we just combine the two.
Another one, we haven't used it, I don't think that much yet, but House Party, Kat, I don't know if you're more familiar with it than me, but House Party is an app that, again, has been getting a lot of traction during COVID. It's being used both by individuals, you know, gathering with friends or family, but also by companies, actually, to create live events. And I'm not super familiar with it yet, but I would just encourage anyone interested in that sort of platform to have a look into it, because it might be something really useful to engage students, particularly because it's all around games. So you get a group of people online sort of playing games, but I believe they can also allow people to speak. Is that correct, Kat? I don't know if you know more than me.
No, I mean, that's a pretty good sum up of what it is. I've only used it once or twice. I know that there are some limitations with how many people you can have on there versus what level of house party you have. But that's all that I know about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. I mean, if there's anybody else on the call who's got suggestions of great online games to use, can you put those responses in the chat, please, so we can all see them? Because I'm sure there are other ideas and suggestions out there.
Yeah, and I was going to say thank you very much for your case study, but also the fact you've given us those practical maps and tools that you use, because I think this is it when we want to access something but we're not sure which one works. There's so many to choose from at the moment. I think it's difficult to know where to go. So to see that you go like, we use MailChimp, we use this, I think is really helpful. So thank you very much. So in our whistle stop tour, I'm going to say thank you very much to Oxford Brookes. And now we're back in the capital, where we're looking to have a student voice, as well as obviously Nina guiding us through the story. So I can hand over to you guys if you're ready.
Thanks, Alison. I hope you can all hear me okay. So hi everyone, thanks for sticking with us right until the end. My name is Nina and I'm a Student Enterprise Manager at London South Bank University. I'm really delighted today to be joined by Elisabetta, who is one of our first year marketing students. Elisabetta, are you just okay to quickly unmute and just say a quick hello so we can all make sure that we can hear you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Perfect, thanks.
Hello everybody. My name is Elizabeth, just like Nina introduced me, and I'm a student at the London South Bank University. And today I'll be talking about my focus group experience as an enterprise ambassador.
Great, thank you, Elisabetta. So it's great to be here with you all today, and thanks to EEUK for the opportunity. Today we're going to be sharing how at LSBU over the last few weeks we have essentially tried to capture student perspectives and student insights to inform and shape our offer for the summer, but also looking towards September for the next academic year. So the photo that you can see on your slide at the moment are some of our lovely enterprise ambassadors. So these ambassadors are paid students from a mixture of disciplines and year groups who essentially support the delivery of our activities throughout the year. So casting our minds back to March, and when we know we're all kind of forced into this weird lockdown situation, the immediate reaction of the team was to move everything that we had pre-planned online. So I'm thinking particularly with a focus on our event series, for example, our workshops and our one-to-ones, and moving this to Zoom. But as we moved through March and April, it was really clear that business as usual just wasn't going to work in the longer term, and there were lots of unknowns. So with this in mind, I set up 6 different focus groups that invited ambassadors like Elisabetta to share their thoughts and ideas and insights relevant to different areas of our work. And these were conducted on Zoom, and they covered different topics, including things like marketing and communications, brand and identity, and Entrecom. Ambassadors like Elisabetta, who I'm really pleased is able to join us today, are in a really unique position because they have a wealth of knowledge, not only from their own student experience, but also through the interactions that they have with different students and also different university departments. So the focus groups essentially provided us with a way to really pause and just try and gain an understanding of what the student world looked like in lockdown. So, what were the key concerns that students were facing at the moment? How were they feeling and how were they spending their time? It also enabled us to put students in a position of leadership. So essentially they were sharing ideas on what they thought we should and shouldn't be doing based on what resonated with them. And I guess it really helped us to kind of confirm what we thought we knew was true, but more importantly, explore what we didn't know. If you could change the slide, please, Alison. Thank you. So the word cloud that you can see on your screen at the moment is just an example of some of the information and insights we've received from the students. So using this question as a specific example, the students said that they found our value in developing their confidence, developing their skills, and essentially they see entrepreneurship as a way to kind of transform them professionally and as people through continued help and support provided by the team. And this kind of value was deemed more important than ever, given the uncertainty not only surrounding COVID-19, but also the uncertainty surrounding the job market. So we took this feedback on board immediately and started to run more online events with a focus on well-being and personal development. And these events have also been shorter in length based on the student feedback and more interactive. And that's speaker to student interactivity, but also peer-to-peer amongst the students. We've also found out through the focus groups how and where students are finding information online. So social media, for example, and particularly Instagram and video were mentioned repeatedly by the students. So for the first time ever, a couple of weeks ago, we ran our pitch party, which is the finale to our startup program, on Instagram Live for the first time. And we actually had better engagement than if we had done this on campus in a room, trying to get people to come and watch. Essentially, as a team, we've found that listening to the students has really helped us to stay up to date. So we now have a bank of information on what they're engaging with whilst they're working in remote environments, and also what their motivations are. We've also gained an understanding of what they want to do digitally. So they're looking for more interaction on social media, for example, event themes focused on personal and professional development, and a more personalised approach. We also, as a team, feel like we're in a much stronger position going into the summer as we plan for our activities, and going into September, to ensure that our activities and our plans and our approach is student informed and student centred. And really, it's helped us to think about how we position the team within this virtual environment by focusing on the channels and the places where students are already, and not making it out of the norm for them. So the students themselves have actually found the sessions really beneficial as well. So that's why Elizabeth is here. If you're able to unmute, Elizabeth, and share your experience.
Yeah, could you move it to the next slide, please? Thank you. So focus groups bring a lot of ideas. I like that we can share our ideas with each other and think about other people's perspectives. This one helps me to consider other points of view, not just what I think. And when joining a focus group on Zoom, we're always greeted by Nina and her other colleagues, so we always felt welcomed. It also makes me feel valued when colleagues want to hear my thoughts, and it grows my confidence as a public speaker. Because of that, I'm more likely to engage. And it is also encouraging that enterprise team takes on board our recommendations. For example, like Nina mentioned, they did the pitch party that took place live on Instagram. It's also nice that we can discuss different topics in a safe place, and there's no kind of like right or wrong answer. I can also talk about and apply what I've learned in the first year of my marketing course at London South Bank University. As an enterprise ambassador, we can't choose our shifts. So I sign up for things that I'm passionate about and very interested to hear what other colleagues have to say. And I'm always eager to share my ideas. It's also nice to be in a small group where the discussion is either open or in turn, and it's easy to speak up, and you don't have to compete to talk over other people. That's it from me. Over to you, Nina.
Thanks, Elisabetta. So over the next few weeks, we're really kind of looking to take these student insights a step further by really inviting the ambassadors like Elisabetta to implement their own ideas through testing and project work. So they're going to be learning that it's one thing to kind of have an idea relevant to social media, but how could they actually implement that going forward? So for example, in the next couple of weeks, Elisabetta and a couple more of our ambassadors are going to work as a project team to come up with a social media campaign that raises awareness of enterprise and the team from a student voice and a student perspective. so that we can essentially test case some content and have that ready for Freshers Week, because we're aware that whilst it's effective to get us in front of students as much as we can, in a digital environment that won't be possible, and it seems like video and using Instagram Lives is going to be a way forward to potentially achieving that. We appreciate today that we've just kind of given a top level summary and just given you some example findings that we've collected from the students and how we've implemented them in the immediate term. Elisabetta and I are more than happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, that was great, and really lovely to hear the student side of it as well and how you've embraced and connected with them. Kate, I don't know if there's any chat that you want to share?
Yeah, thanks from me as well, Elisabetta. It's often hard for us to get students to engage with our events and webinars, so thank you very much. We really appreciate having you along. So in the chat, we have a question which is really for everybody from CO about what platforms and apps and other widgets do people use to create interactive and engaging content. So I'd encourage everybody to respond to that in the chat. But Nina and Elisabetta, is there anything specific you have to say on that?
I mean, I think from our perspective, definitely things like social media it kept coming up, and particularly Instagram, and it's things like Instagram Lives in particular. So I think, I mean, I'm sure Elisabetta can definitely speak from her perspective, but there were also things that came up like podcasts, YouTube, for example. So it's all kind of social media channels that I think students are looking at in their free time. And I think they're looking at it within a behaviour of it being quite a chilled out and relaxed atmosphere. So I think when you're doing anything within those channels, you kind of have to pitch that content to match the kind of feel that they're expecting online. I don't know if Elisabetta, you wanted to add anything.
No, I was just going to say, definitely Instagram is something that popped up a few times, as you said, and as a fellow students, I can definitely say that we always go on Instagram, and something that we use all the time. So it's interesting to have, you know, information that we're interested in, not just something that like interactive.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I feel the need coming along for EEUK to have an Instagram account, actually. We only do Twitter at the moment. I do Instagram for one of my other businesses, but haven't taken the plunge yet for EEUK, so maybe that's coming along. So we have a question from Kelly to Elisabetta. How do students feel about having to use something they don't use? So I guess having to use something that they don't normally use. Kelly, is that what you're meaning? Kelly, you can unmute if you like, if you want to just expand on that question.
Yeah, it's just a concern, because some of my students, I've asked them to even do something like the Get2 test, and they've come back saying they're very concerned about signing up for platforms of any nature that they don't trust or don't know about. So kind of I've had people say about Facebook, for example. So there are some social media platforms even that some students are really not wanting to use. I just wondered, is that common, or am I unusual in having that student?
Yeah, so I guess, well, for me, I don't, I like to use the platforms I already have. So if, you know, I can just expand that. With the kind of data information and stuff, I think we're very aware of information being stolen or passed onto, you know, like a third party without our consent and things like that. So I think that's what people are mostly aware about. So using something that you already have is more of a like a safe place, and you know what happens and you know where to go and where to click and kind of things, rather than using something that you're not very familiar with.
Okay.
I think that is my experience, and I'm just a little bit concerned about doing too much outside the university. You know, I think extracurricular is very different from in curricular. I'll just worry about relying too much on platforms that are not supported by the university for a variety of issues. That's just me, though.
Kelly, I could just add to that. I think the findings that we've gained, and particularly, for example, the points around Instagram, like obviously that's mostly going to work in an extracurricular context where there is that kind of a bit more freedom to kind of explore and test and experiment. In curricula, we've used a mixture of things like MS Teams and Zoom, and they've all been kind of, I guess, security vetted from our IT department, and that's very much the message from the university. But I think the kind of findings that we've gained from the focus groups around things like the personalization of the content, the level of interactivity, I think that kind of finding is important no matter what kind of channel or piece of software that you're using. It's sort of given us an insight into, from a student perspective, what do they want. And I think actually from the focus groups, we gained an insight into the student perspective from a curriculum side of things. At LSBU, it seemed like they were getting a real mixture of recorded sessions. Some of them were just being sent slides. Some of them were being invited to Microsoft Teams. There wasn't kind of a uniform approach when we first all moved into lockdown, which is not surprising because, you know, as professional service groups and academics, we were all kind of feeling our way in the dark. But I think that kind of an interactivity was the thing that students were really holding on to and looking for with anything that was conducted online.
Okay, thank you. Karis has asked, how much pre-training do you give? I think she means to students for use of any new tools. Do you do that, or do you expect them just to pick
if I use the Instagram Live as an example, we literally did like a test live the week before, and we got some of our ambassadors to work a shift for 30 minutes to kind of get them on as participants and kind of get them to practice writing questions into the chat, and for us as kind of the hosts of that event to kind of see what it would look like. But we've also used ambassadors in the sense when we've delivered our events online using Zoom. So getting them to look after the chat box, for example, which I know CEO mentioned and Alison has mentioned in terms of assigning roles. Because within this, we've appreciated that not only has our content and activities had to change, but also the traditional role of an enterprise ambassador has had to change. Like they can't be supporting events by welcoming students necessarily in the same way, or there's a different sort of interactivity which everyone has touched on today. So we've had to kind of shift that role a little bit and really relied on the ambassador feedback when doing that.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. And Marcia has asked that they're about to produce some podcasts specifically aimed at student startups. And this is a question actually that others other than London South Bank colleagues might want to answer in the chat. But do you think this is a good idea? Do you think podcasts are a good idea, Nina and Elisabetta?
From the focus groups, we had a mixed reaction. Some students don't listen to them at all. Some students really enjoy them. And I'm thinking of that in my own. So even in my own context, I don't really listen to podcasts, but my partner really likes them. So I think it's kind of based on personal preference. Elisabetta, I don't know if you want to share your insight.
I think it's about the same because I don't really listen to podcasts, but a few of my friends do. But it's kind of like a mixture of who, you know, some people like it, some people don't, some people listen to them in their own like spare time, some people don't. So
I think for us that's come out of the focus groups is whatever students want to engage in, the benefits of what they're going to get out of it need to be really strong and need to be really visible and clear from the off, because essentially whenever they're engaging with anything online, they're kind of weighing up what's in it for them and if it's worth their time. So I think if you kind of have that, potentially that mindset going forward into your planning for your podcast, that might be helpful, just in terms of the key takeaways for the students when you're putting something together.
Yeah, okay. There's a question a little way up the chat from Fiona, which again, other people on the call I'm sure can answer this via the chat. But Nina or Elisabetta, if you have any thoughts, is anyone using Facebook groups for student classes?
So we're not using Facebook groups purely because we haven't found Facebook to be that useful of a tool, but that's not to say that going forward in our plans that we could also do something to test on Facebook. Elisabetta, are you still using Facebook as a tool?
I still use Facebook, but it's more for like a personal time. So I would say again, it just depends on the people and on the students, and if you have a private group or open group, and if the other students can join in freely on that.
Okay, and there's actually a response within the chat from Libby, also from London South Bank University, about Instagram. So people might, I won't read that out, but people might want to have a look at that as well. I don't see, unless I've missed anything, I don't see any further questions at the moment, Alison.
No, that's brilliant. And just to say thank you very much, that's been really helpful. And the fact you've got the research behind it, it's been really insightful for a lot of us. I think we've all been kind of sense checking and trying to connect with our students where we can, but without maybe the access to a student rep who would normally be chatting to their colleagues in the classrooms, in the corridors, then we're all very kind of isolated. So I think the fact that you've done that research and we're able to share that with us, we really appreciate it. So I think now we've kind of the last 15 minutes of our time, but Kate, you said there was kind of an overarching question that we were going to address, and I don't know if you want to manage that.
So the question came in from Emily Davis a while back, and it was, as we move to next year, are we under even more pressure to evidence the value of our work and the impact it creates in order to secure additional funding? And how do we measure and demonstrate it when it's online? So that is a big question for everybody.
There we go.
So, yeah, I mean, any of our speakers, not just the most recent speakers, but anybody still on the call, like to respond to that, give their thoughts on that.
Hi. I would say something just about the word measure. So there are things that you can easily measure, like the number, the number of participants on a session. And a couple of speakers so far have mentioned that they've had higher engagement on online sessions than face-to-face sessions. So that's an easy thing to be able to do. I think so that's a simple thing. The more complex thing is to capture, as some of the conversation is going on in the chat here, that different things work for different people in different ways. So is it about some qualitative, capturing some qualitative data? And I found this last presentation really interesting about the focus groups, about what is working for different people in different ways, which might not just justify people's existence and demonstrate the value, but maybe more importantly, offer some kind of insights, some research-informed insights about what's working for different types of students and why. That was just a reaction to that question.
Thank you,
I just want to.
Yes, Theo, please go
Yeah,
ahead.
I just want to add quickly what Catherine was just saying. I think it's very valuable points, but also conversion rate. What how these insights convert into actual engagement that actually fit into the curriculum or the extracurriculum in this case, because I think this is what's gonna actually bring the meaningful, how meaningful that engagement is. That's all I want to add.
Okay. Does anybody else have any further comments to add on that?
Yes, Kate. Thinking about the in-curricular side, one of the things that it's a very subjective measure in some ways, but because I use a lot of discussion groups, the quality of the input that students make is really inspiring in some ways. It's difficult to measure objectively, but kind of just looking through the quality of the discussions is quite inspiring.
Thank you, Kelly. Any other comments on that topic? That question, I should say.
Kind of picking up on what Kelly said, maybe just this downloading of the Zoom chat. I'm thinking about our experience in Huddersfield. If we were wanting to gather evidence about student interaction, one of the things to do would be to download the Zoom chat and have that conversation, as you were just saying, Kelly. We've kind of got the evidence in the chat.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. How are we doing on Alison? Shall I hand back to you now? Alison, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to unmute Phil because he had his hand up, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to push a little bit more on that idea of the responses from the students. We get some of our students on certain programs are encouraged to reflect. And what's really interesting is that when we read those reflective reports or journals as they construct them, even though we've developed a really close relationship with that student, things come out in those reflections that we had no idea about. So I think the power of enabling some sort of reflective process and learning from the student's experience is actually really insightful. And as I say, even if you think that you have a close relationship with that student, it's really revealing to see what they put in those reflections that you didn't know and that you didn't respond to at the time. So I think there's a piece about reflection and about students have the opportunity to think about how they've reacted to something and then speaking about it at a later date.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Sorry I missed you. I can't see everybody, so I can't see when people have got their hands up. But I'm going to hand back to Alison now, because I think we did say 12:30 was our finish time, and we're, oh no, it's 12:20. I was not reading my phone correctly. So anyway, Alison, do you want to do some summing up?
Yeah, I think we're seeing on one level some of the issues that we discuss at IEC, that we discuss in our best practice and enterprise exchange events about the challenges of working with people and the challenges of engaging our students and getting them to respond and to understand, and all those things are still our issues. And then obviously we're now seeing how we can respond to this online, and actually I'm really heartened by some of the variety of responses that people have experienced and found, but also the kind of positive fact that it allows students to engage more. And as I said, that's one thing that came out of our student special blog, where we actually interviewed some students. They said, I was never the person to put my hand up, but I was the person to type my comment. And again, I think that gives us some strength and understanding to those things where we've said allocate students those roles so that you have a kind of more collaborative, communicative kind of approach where they're working with you and they're your kind of co-learner, co-host. And as we know, if you're into any of your learning theories, that can actually really make a rich experience, not only a connected experience, but they're really deeply engaged in the higher learning side of things. So I think we're getting some real feelings as to kind of a way forward. I'm massively covered in bits of paper here with my top tips. So thank you to everybody for thinking of things, and our speakers for saying such really rich comments and stuff. So I really appreciate that. We have got a few little notices to update you on, but I just want to check with Kate. I can see my chat flashing, but I've not really been. There's nothing else before we move.
No, I mean, there's loads of top tips in the chat, so really
Thank
grateful
you.
to everybody, and people have been great at actually putting the TT ahead of them so that I've been able to ignore those and I've been looking for questions. So that's great, but there's been tons of those. So there's lots of material there for you, Alison.
Brilliant. Well, I appreciate this hasn't quite been our usual interactive style, but it's really great that we've had that. And just so you know, on a kind of personal level of how we've managed and organised this today, we've all taken quite different roles, because I have tried to do chat and slides and speak, and I can't cope with it all. So in terms of splitting the roles out and working with a colleague or working with a student, Kate and I have obviously co-hosted this. But again, that gives you a tip and a technique to use yourselves, where colleagues can come in and maybe role model how they want things to be, how to ask questions, how to challenge students. So you can use people as either guest speakers to help you role model your learning and to help them engage. So there's all sorts of different ways, but my kind of personal enterprise educator top tip is don't overburden yourself when you're hosting something. So the short bite-size advice that we've heard today is for our learners, but also for ourselves. Make sure that you're putting the brakes in, that you're stepping away, that you're getting the space to actually assimilate and think forward in order to bring together a kind of valid learning experience. You're not trying to fill an hour as you were before, you're trying to get your message across in different ways. So we've got a couple of things we'd like just to share with you in terms of information, things that are coming up. So if I can get to the right slides. Obviously, ECT Toolkit is our top tip for somewhere to go if you're looking for inspiration. You obviously will find that it's full of how to do things in the classroom. So put people in 2s, put them in 4s, get some flip chart, grab your post-its. You can now see from today's discussion on different ways people have worked with Zoom or in their VLE that there's different ways of doing some of these things. So if you look, you can convert some of the approaches that colleagues have used and see that you can do them in a different way online. And we have got one of our guides, we pulled out something against each of the EntEdUk, so my EntEdUk flower. Each of the EntEdUk 15 competencies, each of the petals, we indicated something that you could do, which is on the toolkit designed for a classroom environment, but actually you could adapt it quite easily, give students tasks in their own home, and think about how you apply the social distancing and government guidance to that, but actually they can take those challenges into their household and do some of those things in different ways. So we hope that we find that useful. There's a new series coming online, which again comes out of our research projects, where there's been work, and Kelly, I don't know if you're still there, if you want to say a few words about it, pulling together research, the online assessment methods. Kelly, are you?
Yeah.
You want to just say?
Yeah, still here. So this is some work. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Excellent. So this is some work led by Matt Draycott, and we have been looking at as many online impact tools, shall we say, but some of them can also be used for kind of educational learning. So things like the Get To test, EntEdUk, other things as well. We've got a collection of, I think it's about 16 of them, Alison, in the end.
Yeah, so we're focusing on the online ones at the moment to publish those, but I know you've done more work than that, but obviously given where we're at, that's been our focus.
And we've looked at them, and we've given an overview of what they include, looked at what themes they explore, and some of the output, for example. So hopefully it'll be useful for you to pick up and have a look at what tools are out there that you might want to use, either for assessing impact or for supplementing your learning.
And again, this might help colleagues when they're thinking about how do you prove you're doing what you're doing, is obviously doing things at the start and then repeating tests at the end. So this one, for example, is actually does charge a fee. But obviously ones that Kelly's mentioned, like Get To, I know in Wales you use Catalyst. There's lots of different mechanisms and they're all part of this study that you've done. So Kelly and Matt are available to answer questions, and I've got their database if you want to have anything in advance, but we'll be releasing that information soon. We're also just like to give you sorry,
forgive me, Makuba is on here as well. So Makuba,
right, brilliant.
The people who did a lot of the work on this.
I know it's been a great team effort, and we're really grateful for all the content. It's really, really rich. So yes, thank you. Just quick advance notice, we haven't actually finalised the date for this, but those of you that have been following EntEdUk will know that there's a new report out, and the author of that, Martin, will hopefully be joining us for a keynote on that. So if you're interested, we'll be announcing that very shortly, and encouraging, again, an atmosphere like this with a capped number. We will hopefully be recording that and be able to release that, but that's a little kind of advance notice for you guys, which also leads us on to kind of our chance to connect with you again with our mini conference online kind of approach, where, I don't know, Kate, if you want to say, we've been building up a new concept.
Yeah, so the full IEC 2020 has been rolled forward to 2021. It will be IEC 2021 at Aston University a year in September. But rather than not doing anything at all this year, we wanted to try and do something. So we're doing something that we're calling IEC Online. So it's a lighter version of IEC. It won't have all the sort of parallel sessions and so on that you get in the full IEC, but we are going to have lots of EEUK associate input to it, and there'll be a call going out very soon for you to submit sessions for that, and it will run over 3 days, but it's not going to be 3 full days. So we're sticking with the original dates that we had for IEC 2020, 9th to the 11th of September. It is on the EEUK website as an event, so it's not on the dedicated IEC website because that's all set up for 2021 actually, so you can see what's coming in a year's time. But we have this as an event on the enterprise.ac.uk website. Registration isn't open at this point in time, but will open very soon, and it's completely free for EEUK associates to register for this. There's a £50 charge for non-associates to register, so it's a member benefit in that it's free for you. We won't be limiting numbers on this. We are going to do it using the Zoom webinar platform, which enables us to have a lot more people in. So the method of interaction will be slightly different to this because we're hoping for much larger numbers, but we will still make it as interactive as we possibly can. And it will be all about EUK associates sharing what they do best, as all of our events are effectively. So there's some more advance notice for another thing to get signed up for. We'll email out as soon as it's open for registrations actually, so you will hear about it. So yeah, back to you, Alison. Thank you.
Brilliant. So yes, all that really remains safe. Thank you very much to our speakers. So thank you very much for contributing. There's lots of clapping going on. That's great. Thank you for contributing. And I know obviously we're all learning and sharing, and I hope that that can continue. So we'll keep this open if you want to just carry on if there's any chat. If you want to email me any top tips if you think of anything afterwards, or if there's a topic that you want us to blog about, then please do. The next one's coming up. We're going to just be doing this as a top tips list, and also one about how do you market to your students your extracurricular offer if you're not on campus or they're not on campus. How will you do that? So addressing the challenge when you can't go into a large lecture and do a shout out to 200 people about your enterprise offer. How will you be drawing together all different communication channels and experiences, some of which we've had echoed today, so that's been really great. But Phil's been helping me with that, and Lauren, one of our other directors, so they'll be out soon. So thank you very much, and thanks to co-hosts and presenters very much. So appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for a great morning.
You're very welcome.
Bye-bye, Kate, Alison, everybody. Thank you. It's really interesting.
Bye, Fiona. Bye, Fiona. Nice to see you again.
I realise I've been waving goodbye to people and I'm not even being shown. I've stopped the video recording, I hope.
So the session is still recording.
Okay, well, we could stop that now then, Kate.